Hey, everybody. It is noon in the East. It is 9 a.m. in the West. This is Lunch with Lincoln for Monday, September 19th, 2022. Before we get started, I want to say thank you so much to Jeff Timmer for so ably sitting in the captain's chair these many weeks. I want to welcome Lincoln Project Senior Advisor, all around good guy, and Democratic strategist, Joe Trippi. Joe, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Reed.
So, Joe, we're 50 days out here now, 7 or so weeks from Election Day. And you and I have been through this more times than I can count. It's that weird thing, Joe, when campaign season, really gets into gear, it's hot and the sun stays up long. And by the time Election Day rolls around, it's cold and the sun goes down early. And it's a lot that happens in those few weeks. So, give us your sense of where we are here, mid-ish September.
Look, I think it's touch and go, to be honest with you. I think a lot of that's good news. I mean, we start out the year, there's going to be a red wave wipeout and all that stuff. It's clear since Dobbs, since the war in search, a bunch of the crazy stuff that's been going on with the MAGA cult, and a lot of the really strong stuff that the Biden administration has gotten passed, some of it bipartisan, but Inflation Reduction Act and other things, infrastructure bill. It's clear there's been a big shift, as we know. And I think the most interesting thing is the Fox News desk. They're a decision desk. Put out a poll and a new model a few days ago that said that Republicans are going to pick up seats in the House in November, but their model said it would be one seat. So that's where I think we are right now. I think we're in a 50-50 jump ball in the House. Could go 10 seats either way. I still think Democrats are in line to pick up one or two seats in the Senate. I mean, to gain seats, not lose the Senate. But look, it's all out. As you said, I mean, these last 50 days, anything can happen. Anything can change. The momentum can shift. We can't, the pro-democracy forces that are out there coming together in the coalition to stop the MAGA cult from gaining a majority in the House or taking the Senate. They're out there fighting every day. They're well-funded, and they've had the outrage machine and everything going full bore for a decade now or more to get to this point. Plus the courts, making crazy decisions because they stacked them.
Right.
We've really got to keep our foot on the gas, keep doing the work. And as I like to say, keep hoping, and not hoping because we know they'll do it. They keep doing the crazy.
So, Joe, Heidi Przybyla, formerly of NBC News, had a piece in Politico over the weekend that said that Democratic operatives, strategists, even candidates, are desperate for Democratic donors to pay attention to state level races, specifically governors and secretaries of state, and are feeling a little underwhelmed by the response they're getting to that. Why is that? Why has it been hard for Democrats or the party to really focus on state level races as a sort of key component of democracy and governance?
Actually, this is one of the whole reasons we're in this mess today, because the party writ large, particularly has done a job over the years of training its activists, or training is not the right word, but basically making its activists and donors believe that the Senate and the House were everything every year, except for presidential years, focusing on only federal races. All the money, all the donors, all the activists were always focused on the House and the Senate. While the Republican Party, well-funded and having a real long-term strategy to seize power, has been focused on those races, obviously, but very much more focused on legislatures, on taking legislatures, on legislative seats, on down ballot state seats. In fact, the Democratic Party really barely ever really focuses on governor's races. Now that's changed somewhat this year. They get that oh, wait a minute, there's things called Secretary of State's races, and they count. But I think it's like trying to turn a big battleship where everybody, our donor base has been our activists, even online, on social. Most of the focus is not necessarily on what's more important for democracy, but again, on the House and Senate. Like that's how I opened up my talk. On the other hand, things Lincoln Project we've done with Trippi, Olson, and others is come up with targets that are front and center. What's the most important race for democracy? Not, and that may mean Mastriano is more important than Fetterman. Not Fetterman's important too, but because Mastriano in Pennsylvania would be governor and could select the secretary, appoint the Secretary of State, and obviously with Pennsylvania, that would be a massive threat to democracy and how votes are counted, if they're even certified out of there the way they actually happen. That puts that more at risk. So I think we've been out there leading that way, but it's not, and I think that's helping Democrats catch up to that writ large, but it's still a long road to convince people that these seats are important too. And Secretary of State's, given what's been going on, are going to be really important. I wouldn't want Trump to be making that perfect call to Mastriano's Secretary of State in Pennsylvania in 2024.
Well, and so let's stick on this for just a sec, because there in our clips this morning, Joe, we saw some news out of Arizona, one of, I think, our existential states as well, a state Biden, and that is purple, but certainly not blue, I don't think.
No.
And it said that, there's a survey out that showed Carrie Lake, the Republican ultra MAGA nominee, super Trump fan, up 3 on Democratic nominee Katie Hobbs, and that Mark Finchem, the Republican for Secretary of State, who is crazier than Lake, if such a thing is possible, is up 8 on the Democrat Adrian Fontes, who I met a few months back when I was in Phoenix, and is a terrific guy. So, I mean, what do you think the issue is there? Is it that just Democrats, again, is it just a lack of attention to that? Is it that there is a little bit of a swing back between 2020 and 2022? I mean, because these candidates, at least on the Republican side, we should remember, gang out there, never be guilty of 2015 thinking. Just because someone is can't win, right? Let's be clear about that. But Joe, what's your sense of something like that?
Well, one, I think it has been Democrats slow to writ large at the national level, slow to focus on resources and help for these kinds of races. The second one is, I think our voters are, they may be coming out to vote for Obama or coming out to vote for Fetterman, but then they don't, or whoever's on, Biden, whoever's on the ballot at the top, probably in Arizona, but they don't stay in the booth to vote for some of those lower races like Secretary of State. And again, they don't see the importance of them. We haven't stressed it as a party. We haven't said, hey, democracy's on the ballot. Biden just started to do that, really, with his speech. But and on the, on the MAGA side, if you want to switch tables on, they're going to stay in all the way down to school board, because again, they've been, local matters, and that's been a mantra of the right, from the beginning and building up, and we've been doing it the opposite way. And I think, as a Democrat, I think that was a big mistake, and hopefully we can catch up. But yeah, these people need help. So if you can help a Secretary of State candidate in Arizona, Michigan, in
Wisconsin, Nevada,
yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about President Biden for a second, Joe. So, over the weekend, there was a new survey out showed that Democrats winning, not surprisingly, on things like abortion, democracy, the environment, Republicans winning on things like the economy, safety, law enforcement. But which is interesting given the fact that the president, since last November, has had a pretty significant streak of. You mentioned the IRA that passed just a few months ago, or just last month, I should say, infrastructure, which passed last November, that's really starting to, I think, try and create an economy that is more free and fair. We saw that he and his labor secretary just brokered a deal with the rail systems to ensure that rail workers got a significant bump for them. Not to say that they're making millions of dollars. That in a place like you,
not to mention, Reed, that would have taken the entire economy down if he hadn't helped broker that deal. This is another thing where he doesn't get credit. I mean, big enough credit for. I mean, look, presidents get credit for things they shouldn't get credit for, and they get hit for stuff they shouldn't. This is something that literally happened that I don't think any other president could have pulled it off the way he did and actually saved the U.S. economy from going under, but no one knows about it.
Now, listen, just let me just say this as an aside. Thank your truck drivers and thank your rail workers, because literally the country and probably most of the world doesn't work without them. And they are often, I think, anonymous on rail beds as we see them go by, and on highways. They're giant trucks, and we take them as objects. But I think rarely do we intellectualize, Joe, just what it means to have all those men and women driving back and forth across the super slab day in and day out. But also, look, on Ukraine, right? He single-handedly reconstituted NATO for the first time in 50 or 60 years, made the United States again a beacon of democracy. Is attempting to do that at home, is showing that when you show strength as a democracy, right, that you can achieve broader peace.
Right.
Your allies in the fight in Ukraine, where they are, giving it to the Russians. And that, here, even going back to his State of the Union speech, he talked about how the Democrats were going to make investments in local law enforcement, understanding that if people don't feel safe, it's very hard for, it's a foundational piece of American society. And frankly, the basis of a democratic government, right? You trade safety for security in some cases, and that's not always the best thing, but taken to its extreme. And then also, I think even as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, also made, and I know that some more progressive activists are upset about this, also made a lot more investments in energy production, not just green, but also traditional, to try and bring down that price of gas and ensure that we have the energy freedom we need here at home. So I mean, it's to me, there's a lot going on. How do we help make sure that our friends out there are communicating that down into the voters?
Well, we have to do it. I mean, look, the problem is the media is so fragmented. And look, we've talked about this before. The outrage machine of Fox, Breitbart, all that, it's been up there for years, and it's now grabbing a hold. But it sort of drives the dialogue out there. It's what the mainstream media will follow. For instance, sending the migrants to Martha's Vineyard. I mean, look, the Republicans are going to try to make this about crime, immigration, and the economy. By the way, I don't think it's to convince anybody to move to them. It's to inflame their base.
Right.
And so it's like two governors are assigned to make sure we can inflame the base on immigration, watch the elites go crazy, own the libs by sending them to Martha's Vineyard, so that the mantra is going to be, they're coming to get you, and we know who they are when they do that,
right?
With crime, keep the two governors who are beating up on immigrants and keeping that thing going. So that's where they're at. NBC came out with a poll, I think yesterday, that said there's two waves going on right now. There's Republicans win against generic Ds on things like crime, immigration. Democrats are defeating Republicans generically on protecting democracy, women's rights, protecting abortion, abortion right, the right to make your own decisions over your body. And I do think the other thing that's happened is Biden's approval rating's gone up 11 points. It's now in that poll up to 45 approved, with slightly underwater, but nowhere near what it's been. So we got to keep driving the counter to their outrage. And that's why things like join the union.us, where people can help us, and on social media, pushing out messages that the Lincoln Project is putting out in spots. We're the peers that can peer-to-peer keep pushing the right messages out and wake up more people to what this fight really is about. It's a pro-democracy coalition versus the enemies of democracy. And right now, democracy is number one as the top issue, not by a lot, but it's above crime and inflation.
But the fact that it's up, but the fact that it's on the list at all, Joe, I think means we've got something going on, right?
Yeah, because we when we started talking about this, like, I don't know, a long time
year and a half ago,
yeah,
2 years ago, 3 years ago,
it was like, you guys are crazy. What's autocracy versus democracy? People that'll never. Well, it's now the number one thing people are concerned about, and when you actually look at how those people are voting, the people that are concerned. I know people say, hey, there's a bunch of MAGA people who think they're saving democracy too. That's true. They think that. But when you actually look at the people who rank saving democracy or protecting it first, and how those people are voting, much more Democratic. Democrats have a big lead there. So I think that message is getting through. We got to keep pushing that message. And I do think you're right, Reed, that that's part of all the things that you listed that Biden and Democrats have done, with a few Republicans at times, is responsible now, because people are feeling it. They're seeing gas prices go lower. People are starting to feel some of those things, and that's got to be part of. And I think they're seeing the success of Ukraine against Russia. When so many were saying, "What the hell are we doing there?" Or cheering Putin on. Trump and Carlson and the gang. So I think that's all getting into this and pushing Biden's approval up. Look, if he's at 45 now, first of all, it's never happened before. Usually when a president's got low approval ratings, they flatten or continue to slide down. His have come up 11 points in that NBC poll. And that's not the only one. They've come up 9 in some of the others. He's really, so with those two things happening, I think what that has done is put us in a place where, yes, I know people have been saying for a long time, including us, that we thought we could gain a couple seats in the Senate. But, the House, be lucky if we can hold it to 20-seat loss or something, because it's going to be so big. I just think we're now in a kind of even playing field in the House. That doesn't mean we won't lose it by 10 or 15 seats or hold it. But it's much more competitive, and that's why if you can help one of those seats, there's 32 toss-ups out there. I don't see them as being a whole lot different from the Senate race in Pennsylvania or the Senate race in Ohio. I mean, these are not red states or blue states like Pennsylvania. They're all toss-up states. Well, why would we be expecting races to be any different in obviously not bright red redrawn districts, but the 32 toss-up House districts, those voters are a lot more like, those districts are a lot more like these battleground states like Georgia and Pennsylvania that we're seeing. I think we're in them, but we have to keep doing work.
Well, and it's not East Texas, right? So, all right. So let's stick on democracy for a second. So over the weekend, Donald Trump had a rally in Youngstown, Ohio, which was added to the weirdness of Trump, but I think there was a method to the madness, which was what I've been saying, and without much data to back it up, other than I think the Republican Senate primary in Pennsylvania of a few months ago, is that the Republican Party voter-wise is really sliced into 3. It's like 25% rump, right? Those are the people that voted for like what's his name, the stockbroker. And then there was the sort of 30 to let's say 35 to 50% that's in the middle, quote unquote, but that's the Trump people. And then the rest are the ultra MAGA, right?
Right.
They have gone past him. These are the people who absolutely believe in Putin should own Ukraine. These are the people who believe that no Christian, no matter what, no nothing. Women in the house, right? Traditional white Christian values. The stuff that's sort of antithetical to the American experiment, but certainly America in 2022. And my sense is, and this is what I've thought for a while, was that he would move to them because he knows he has to shore them up, that they're the core of the core, right? The brightest, hottest part of the dwarf star. And that seems to be what he was doing. They had this weird finger pointing thing, this weird music, and then really just a rehash of his 2016 convention speech and his 2021 American Carnage speech, or excuse me, 2017 American Carnage speech at the inaugural. This was, I mean, the idea that like we're not all going, did you just see what the hell happened there? And then Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania followed up where he asked everybody to put their right hands in the air to signify, their loyalty. I mean, they're not even hiding it, Joe. I mean, it's like old newsreels from 1935.
Yeah, somebody said we have to drop the semi out of semi-fascist. It's like, it's like no, I think you're right. And I think the problem that's going to create, though, for a lot of these Republican candidates, and I think we saw this in New York 19 with the Ryan Molinaro race, where Molinaro is not one of the crazies. I mean, on the Republican side. And Ryan outperformed Biden and won that special election. I think all this is really starting to taint even some of the more moderate, the few that are left that are running out there on the Republican side. And so you're seeing the scrubbing on one hand, the scrubbing of websites to take off their abortion stance or the big hug with Trump. At the same time, they too have to play to what Trump just did in this rally in terms of that hyper MAGA extreme crowd. And if they don't, somebody's not going to vote for them. So I just think this is I did not believe a Trump rally could get any weirder than they already were. But this one, you're right. I think he moved there because he knows that's his core that he's got to keep with him to survive. To survive and push forward and own the party, because that's the group that holds the entire Republican Party. What sane pieces are left of it holds them hostage, and that's what he wants to keep. He wants to keep his hostage takers inflamed and with him.
Well, and you saw that he lost his primary, so Republicans of the Assembly in Arizona, Rusty Bowers, who gave, I think, very compelling testimony over the summer to the January 6th committee, lost his primary because he would not go along with Trump, and then he testified. But even after that, remember that he sort of tried to find a way back in and say, well, I would vote for Trump, but that was too late. He even last week, Joe, said, no, these are fascists. Okay, I'm out of a job. I'm headed out. Like, I'm headed into retirement. This is a long-standing conservative Mormon Republican in Arizona, and he's saying they're fascists.
No, you're seeing that. You're seeing more and more voices start to say, stand up. Former Republicans are Republicans, and starting. By the way, I think this rally kind of like just it's hard. You can't deny it anymore. I mean, it was clear what was going on in the Mastriano.
Well, and he's not gonna shut up between now and Election Day. Trump can't help himself. And the Kerry Lakes and the Doug Mastrianos of the world will continue to double and triple down, which I'm not sure why anybody's surprised by that. They're incapable and unwilling to do that anyway. But also, not just Rusty Bowers, but significant groups in places like Michigan, where there is now a group of Republicans for Whitmer that is formed to support Governor Whitmer's reelection campaign. Pennsylvania, there's a group of prominent Republicans who are supporting Josh Shapiro's campaign over Doug Mastriano. So, guys, when you're out there, remember that if you have Republican friends who are uncomfortable with the GOP as it is today, they're not alone. Far from it, right? And these are the folks that we talk to all day, every day, right? These are the what we call our ban in line voters, people who aren't, were never comfortable with Trump, aren't comfortable with Trump or anything we see like that. And now, there are more and more folks come and say, we can't do this. And remember, guys, we don't need every Republican flip it or skip it, right? Flip to Shapiro or skip Mastriano, whichever one, we get a vote in the right direction. We just need enough. And I think that that's a huge thing for everybody to see, is that the Republican Party is fracturing in even a small way, Joe, as this little piece of the iceberg calves off into the sea. And that, hopefully, if we can get those folks to do what we need them to do, like they did in 2020, I think, can help us get to 24, being able to really strengthen and grow that coalition we've been working on.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think that's one of the things we've been talking about for a long time, is you reach out to some of these people that you stop talking to. Just try to talk to one or two. And I know I always say this, I hear people screaming at Lincoln right now, but it's really important, because enough of them, yes, you're right. 4 out of the 5 or 6 you talk to are going to be intransigent and still be the people that he could shoot somebody in Times Square and get away with it. There are a couple now that are starting to really have problems and really be thinking about it, and to talk to them about why they can't be for Kerry Lake in Arizona, for instance. If you're in Arizona, I mean, to start reaching out, because if you peel off just 1, 2, 3 points, and by the way, you have more power than you know when you actually sit down and talk to a peer, to a friend, a coworker, a family member, even one that you've written off to Trump land. You've got more power in this election than you know, and you should use it.
Right. Well, let me just say this, because I was just skipping through the chat here, Joe, and a couple of people were talking, not friends of ours, but that's okay. We welcome all comers. We're referring to Donald Trump's reference to Biden's cognitive state. And to all of you out there, I just remind you that this is the man who said man, woman, camera, person, TV, as an example of the cognitive test that he was able to pass when he talked to Chris Wallace in the Rose Garden in August of 2020. He is, I think, the last person in the world who should ever really speak to anyone else's cognitive ability. But Joe, we know that Donald Trump's favorite thing is projection. All right, Joe, tell us where we can find That Trippi Show.
That Trippi Show, my podcast, in the Lincoln Project family. You can find it wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just Google That Trippi Show, and you'll be able to find on your device how to get there. And you can also find me at Joe Trippi on Twitter.
All right. And also, as always, gang, yes, tune into That Trippi Show. Give it a listen. It's great. Always some guests recently. Also, gang, I would implore you, tune into the Lincoln Project podcast. We got all the information you need to know about how to fight these fights. I want to say thank you to Joe. I just want to say thank you to Jeff Timmer for helming the show here, and to Sam and Felicia for all their work behind the scenes. We will see you next week, gang. And as always, make sure you're registered to vote. Join the union.us and get out there and do your part.
January 6th wasn't an accident. It wasn't simply a crowd getting out of control. It wasn't merely a riot. It was a planned insurrection. An insurrection which did not end when the sun set that day. Since then, Republican legislators in 47 states have introduced changes to voter laws in an attempt to rig the system they tried to overthrow. And now, the GOP is putting outsized effort into nominating MAGA candidates for Secretary of State seats across the country, positioning their operatives into seats of power so they can preach the big lie and usurp the will of the people. From the lowest to the highest levels of government, every race, every seat matters now more than ever. Americans must pay attention to their Secretary of State races and ensure that those who preach the big lie are stopped. The insurrection is still going, and if it doesn't end, democracy will.